Companies have invested between $30 and $40 billion globally on enterprise-level generative AI. But according to MIT's 2025 State of AI in Business report, which was released in August 2025, up to 95% of these organizations are seeing zero measurable impact on the bottom line. The fear is that we're starting to see similarities to the dot-com boom of the 1990s. There's a huge gap between the hype and what's actually being delivered. Organizations are investing heavily, but they're not seeing the transformation they were expecting. So in this episode, we'll explain first the technical and workflow limitations that companies are facing. And then secondly, I'm going to show you how to use human-centered design and use case workshops to find real problems that your company has, and then how you can apply AI to help with those problems. And the third thing, we're going to take a quick look at OpenAI's new agent kit. And so this has just come out recently, but this gives us a window into how we might be able to automate these workflows in the future. If you're new here, I'm Quinton Hiini, and this is the third episode of the QAI for Business framework, which I created based on my real-world experience leading global digital transformations and helping companies get more value out of AI. And if you're a business leader or a project manager or an AI consultant and you're leading an AI transformation in your company, please feel free to download the QAI for Business framework, which you'll find in the link below. And that gives you a framework to think through how you can approach digital transformations in your organization. So the research suggests that there's two main problems. The first is that leaders are struggling to connect AI to real business problems on the ground that their employees face in their day-to-day work. The second is generative AI's inability to maintain memory and context across large workflows. So you've probably experienced this when you're creating a prompt and you have to write the whole thing again because you run out of context. When you scale that to an enterprise solution, you run into more problems like this. So the combination of these two issues is why the vast majority of companies are struggling to generate real value. Okay, so let's dive into the first point. So why are enterprises failing to connect AI with value? So first off, I just want to distinguish that there's two different kinds of AI usage. So there's general purpose tools, which most of you are aware of, like ChatGPT and Gemini, which people use to summarize documentations, to write emails, all these kind of things. But what we're really focusing on in this episode is the enterprise AI solutions. So for example, you may have customized solutions that are built onto Salesforce to help with your sales leads, or perhaps you have other tools that maybe analyze legal documents, these kind of things. That's what we're focusing on when we talk about enterprise AI solutions in this episode. So the MIT report found that only 5% of enterprise-level AI pilots actually make it into production and deliver sustained value. So what I mean by this is 60% of organizations have evaluated enterprise-grade AI tools, but only 20% of those had actually reached the pilot stage. But only 5% of organizations have ultimately implemented these tools in a way that delivers value. Now, at the same time, 90% of employees who are surveyed are using their own AI tools because they find them faster or more flexible or just better quality for the needs that they have. So you've probably seen this problem before when you have a bunch of different ad hoc solutions that don't really integrate and are only for specific tasks. So the thing is, employees are using their own AI tools and they have these expectations around how they'll work on their individual tasks. But the problem is when you try to scale this usability to large enterprise workflows, it's not as easy as that. And so this is where we run into the problem with maintaining memory and context over large workflows. So the problem is, in general, generative AI tools don't have the ability to maintain memory and context over large workflows and to continuously learn from new instructions while you're using them. I'm sure many of you have seen this before when you're using a tool like ChatGPT, and as the conversation grows, you start to lose details from the beginning there. This is the same challenge that enterprises are having as you scale solutions across large workflows. So I don't want to get too technical here, but they call this problem stability plasticity dilemma. And what that basically means is that AI models need to be flexible enough to absorb new information, but they also need to be reliable enough to hold on to what they already know. So there's this constant battle between what do you hold on to and what does it overwrite. So when it comes to day-to-day chats, sure, the model holds context within the limited amount of window that you have there, within the tokens that you have. But when it comes to broader enterprise level workflows, you often run into that challenge of understanding, remembering that context, and learning from the inputs that you've already put in. So what ends up happening is that you have to end up re-explaining yourself multiple times and refeeding in context every time. So this here is a big challenge that generative AI has. So there are some workarounds for this. For example, RAG systems, they have storage and they have access to verified data that you can pull in. You can also use prompt templates to automate a lot of work and to remind the large language model with what you've been talking about. And there's also APIs that can pull and exchange information here. These kind of things work better on smaller localized issues, but the problem is, again, when you're trying to scale to a large enterprise solution, these kind of things just fall flat. And it really is just because of that issue around the memory and the context. And so the second part of the problem is identifying real workflows that AI can actually help with. Too many companies assume that broadly applying an AI tool will fix all of these problems, but they're not diving deep enough into the problems on the ground where the actual issues are. What you really need to be doing is focusing on real pain points that your team members are experiencing and figure out how you can use AI to help with those. So what I'm going to do now is give you a 3-step framework, which you can find in my QAI for Business framework, which you can download from the link below, which gives you a methodology and templates to help you really hone in on what these key problems are and how you can apply AI to solving these. So there's many ways you can conduct need-finding interviews and workflow discovery workshops. The process I like to use comes in 3 steps. So the first is observe. So you want to observe employees as they show you the challenges they face in their workflow. The second step was around synthesizing, so taking these observations, putting them together, and coming up with a backlog of issues that you might want to be able to apply AI to. And the third is around analyzing these in workshops to identify what the priorities are and where you really can implement AI to help with these things. So step 1, observe. So this is where we use principles from human-centered design to actually watch employees show you what their problems are. So the magic here is seeing with your own eyes all the different screens and processes that your employees need to do. Maybe they need to jump through different systems in order to just get their work done. So things you want to keep an eye out for are workflow bottlenecks. Where are you seeing repetitive, low-value tasks that consume significant time, decision gaps? So where critical decisions are being frequently made without sufficient data. Friction points, so processes or tools that cause significant user frustration or errors or customer experience failures. Or it could be that the problems are completely different. So the point is that you want to have your employees show you so you can see with your own eyes what the challenges are firsthand that they're facing. Some of the best practices for when you're doing these. The first is observe the workflow. So you want them to show you. You don't want to tell them what their problems are. So what you want to do is ask the interviewee to physically demonstrate their process through sharing screens or watching them in real life. So that reveals the nuances and the friction points so that you get to observe real nuances and friction points that they might forget to articulate when you're asking them questions. So the next thing is making sure that you listen more than you talk. So in general, you want about 80% listening and 20% guiding the conversations to stay on track to either probe deeper into what their problems are, etc. And when you're doing this, you want to use open-ended questions. So for example, walk me through how you did this, or do you want to tell me a little bit more about that? The goal is to deeply understand the problem space and not prematurely suggest AI solutions. Another technique is to utilize a 5 whys methodology. So when you identify a problem, ask why. And you can ask why that happened and why that happened and why that happened, and go back 5 times. Often it uncovers deeper issues around what the real problem might be. The next is focus on friction, not on solutions. So you're not asking how can AI help you, you're asking what are the most frustrating parts of your day. Typically what you'll find is that there's a mixture of processes, technology, and company culture issues that are all mixed up that might be making it difficult for employees to get their work done. So it's important to be clear on what technology can and can't solve and what are issues that you might need your team or leadership to sort of solve outside of the technology issues. The truth is, if technology doesn't serve a genuine human need, people won't use it. So step 2 is to synthesize. And this is simply analyzing the information you got from your need-finding interviews, seeing what patterns emerged and determining which parts are the most important. So what you want to end up with here is a backlog of pain points that you can start working through with your team and try to analyze and prioritize these. And then step 3 is to analyze. And I like to do this in group workshops. And so in these workshops, the idea is that you pull various stakeholders who are impacted by these various pain points, and you start talking through different ideas around priority, how you might be able to solve these problems, and where AI might be able to help with these things. Now, it's given that at this point you've identified what the problems are. Now you're diving into it a little bit more with your team members and trying to come up with ways that you can apply AI to these solutions, to these problems. But again, the thing that's really important in these workshops is not to try and force an AI solution. You need to be really mindful of what is process and what is actually technology. And also be mindful of what tasks should still sit with humans. So if you follow these processes, you'll be able to help better identify real pain points that exist and how you might apply AI to solve these problems. And you'll also avoid wasting money trying to solve pain points that don't exist. All right, so now I want to focus a little bit more on the future of workflows and agent solutions. And in particular, for the sake of being on the same page, let's just give some definitions. So first of all, an AI agent is an AI system that, given a goal, can break it down into little steps, can call on different tools and different data sources and make limited decisions that you give it. An agentic workflow is a designed sequence where the agent coordinates tasks across systems, often with a human in the mix who can review different points. Well, at least at this point. So as of the time that I'm recording this, which is October 2025, there's still a gap between what people expect from AI agents and what organizations can actually achieve. So the reason for this is there's a lot of marketing and hype around what agentic workflows are going to do and how they're going to remove jobs and all this kind of thing. But the truth is, unless you're focusing these on real pain points, they're still not going to do the job properly. And the other thing to be aware of is that agentic workflows aren't quite click and go at the moment. It's not just a matter of writing a few prompts and you've automated your assistant. There's a lot of process involved there, understanding the workflows, as we've talked about, connecting different APIs, all this kind of stuff. So it still takes a lot of time to design, coordinate, and build properly. So OpenAI's Agent Kit essentially packages all these different bits and pieces that you're using to create agentic workflows into one toolkit. So instead of needing to call things from different tools and different bits and pieces, it's all automated and streamlined into one place. So in theory, instead of cobbling together all these different parts of the agent, you can handle the majority of the workflow within the agent kit. But again, it's important to stay realistic here. The agent kit doesn't mean anyone can build a fully autonomous agent that fixes complex workflows. You still need to be thoughtful of your design, clear of your objectives, and the collaboration between business and technical teams is equally as important. So because this release is still quite new, people still need to test it to determine whether it achieves the objectives it sets out to automate the workflows for creating agents. Having said this, it probably will lower the technical barriers to building agents and workflows. And with time also, I imagine it will continue to improve. So my recommendation is to get in there and give it a try, actually. But when you're using it, you do have to make sure that you're remembering basic principles of making sure workflows essentially hitting key problems. It's a little bit too soon to say whether the agent kit is going to fully revolutionize how workflows are created and how agents are created. But it is a good direction to be heading in, I believe. And so I'm personally also looking forward to playing around with this a bit myself. So just to quickly summarize again, the key things we covered in this video are the technical and the workflow reasons why so many companies are struggling to implement and get return on investment from AI enterprise solutions. And you can use the human-centered design concepts that I've outlined in this video, and which you can download from the QAI for Business framework in the link below. And then thirdly, keeping an eye on the Agent Kit from OpenAI and other tools that come out like this, to see if they do actually start to simplify the workflow and make it a bit easier for people to make agentic workflows. But again, don't forget the basics of making sure that you're solving real problems. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Remember, you can download the QA for Business framework. And thank you very much. And finally, just a quick shout out to our sponsor for today's video, Alexandra McCulloch. Mihi kia koe, Alex. Kia ora.